Right, let's get started. Welcome in everyone. I will jump over the next one to turn off that music. And by way of beginning today's session, I'd wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we all meet. We recognise the continuing connection to land, waters, and community, and I pay my respects to them, their cultures, to elders past, present, and emerging. And also in recognition that we are a binational team, Google also acknowledges Māori as tangata whenua, the original custodians, and Te Tiritia Waitangi partners of Aotearoa New Zealand. We respect the history to Ao Māori, the Māori worldview, and commit to elevating the voices and experience of Māori and communities through Google's products, platforms, and people. So welcome into today's session. This is a look at our Google for Education team. We used to call it our ANZ team, but as you can see, there are people who are working across APAC, and even Uncle Swan, if you know Uncle Swan, of course, he's working in our International Impact team as well. And we are super lucky to be joined today by Kimberly Hall, who I'm sure is not a stranger to anybody. So thank you for your time today, Kimberly, and your expertise around this super important topic. I'll let you intro yourself in a little bit.
I was like, is this the point where you want me to talk?
Yeah, you talk. Why not? Let's do that.
All right. Hi, everyone. As Steve said, I'm Kimberly. If I am yet to meet you, that's definitely my on me, because I love meeting people who use our tools really well. I'm based in Melbourne, which is Wurundjeri country here in Australia, and very, very lucky and privileged, I guess, in many ways. But one of the things that I've had the great fortune to do a lot of over the years is actually work with some of the amazing people at Google who are designing our technologies to be inclusive first. So I'm going to share some of that today. I am going to, and I was just chatting with her and she's on the call and she doesn't know I'm about to call her out. I am going to actually call out one of our fabulous colleagues who's on the call, Althina Jackson, who I did just send her a message when I saw her join the call and say, hey, Althina, you could run this webinar and I could have the morning off. Because Althina is an incredible advocate for inclusive technologies, and Althina and I have actually collaborated on this very presentation before. So I am somewhat joking, Althina, but like if you want to just take over, I'll totally hand it to you as well. So I might actually call on you if that's all right, Althina. Please do not ever hesitate to add and correct. I don't know everything. I'll start by sharing that with everyone. All of us are constantly learning, and one of the things with our technologies at Google is that, as most of you know, they're constantly changing too, which is like super exciting. But it also means that sometimes you can be in the middle of a presentation and you're like, oh, that button that was there, nope, doesn't look like that anymore. So we will go on that journey together. I'm going to share my slides up front because there are some actual great resources in here. I'm supposed to start talking like this now, Steve, or sorry, have you finished?
No, sure, you go for it. You just go for it. I was going to say, I've just realized something today that I did the little hacky thing where you change the URL to present in slides, but you can't do the captions when you're doing it that way. You can only do it in slideshow mode. So I went to turn on my captions and figured out you can't do it if you just do the hacky little present one.
Interesting.
You can only do it in slideshow mode. And of course, because we're in Meet, if anybody does want to turn on captions, there is that CC button down the bottom in the controls where you can turn on your own closed captions if you need to as well. So
and we are going to talk about captions on lots of different tools today as well. Yeah. I'm just going to pin the link to that. Does that work? Can you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or can you get that to that slide deck? I have a few versions of it, I will admit, and our at google.com email addresses we can't share to anyone with the link, so I have to copy it and do it in our training domain. But then I was an English teacher, but I clearly am failing at naming conventions, because it turns out that I have 4 different presentations named exactly the same thing. And so I always am like, wait, did I share the right one? So this is this general slide deck we're going to work from today. Anyone who has ever seen me present before will know I'm terrible at staying on track with the slides. But basically I wanted to provide them for you because there are some really great resources in here. And I'm actually going to that point, before we jump into anything else, I'm going to go straight to the good stuff, so that if you are interested in doing a bit of a choose your own adventure style learning today, I fully and totally support that, because we all learn in different ways and through different paths. So the last few slides in this slide deck, Steve, this is not the one that I put the evaluation form in. I'll add it. I've got it in.
Well, I can come back at the end and do that, and do the
Okay, great.
evaluation form as well.
So I put in.
Would you like me to let you know if you're kind of going half an hour or 45 minutes over time?
No, I have to finish at 10:15 Australian time, right?
Correct. That'd be
That's fine. I can keep my own time, I promise.
Sweet. Right. I will stop talking down. Leave it to you.
So we have some really great resources that, yes, as I said, if you are someone who would, when you come to these sorts of things, you're like, just get to the part where you're talking about X. And if you've come along with something you're really interested in finding out about, please don't hesitate at any point to use the chat and ask questions, but also feel free to jump through to the end of this presentation and explore the different resources that are available in relation to accessibility at Google, because if you don't find your answer there, please also let me know, because our team is incredibly receptive to feedback, and they want to make sure that they're constantly evolving what we're creating and sharing, so that we are actually helping everyone. On these different resources, the top slide, I'll just share this one quickly, is probably like the first point that I would go to if you're ever looking for specific information around accessibility in education related tools. Obviously, Google Workspace is available for both education and for businesses, but this is sort of framing it under an education narrative, I guess, and you'll see that you can actually jump in and find different types of resources that we have to support vision, mobility, cognitive, and hearing. And when you click on these, it takes you straight down to that, and then you'll find that there is more resources from there as well. So a really great, simple way of finding a whole lot of information. On the next slide after that, there's even more links, and nobody is ever expected to click through all of these, I will clarify. But there are, you can see a heap of different resources that we're creating to try and I guess, provide and practice what we preach around the idea that everybody is going to need different things in order to thrive. So we're trying to provide different resources and different bits of information in different ways. So we have short YouTube videos, we have flashcards, we have lots of website links, and etc. in there, like how-to guides, instructions, and things like that. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that this is not how. There you go. That's my presentation done. Thanks for coming. Have a great rest of your break. I'm not sure if that's the order you're supposed to do a presentation in when you start at the end, but I have sat through enough professional learning in my lifetime to know that sometimes it's good just to let people know that if there's something you really want to know about, I want to empower you to be able to try and find it yourself and then ask questions if need be as well. Okay. I should also give you a little caveat that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this more, that I did get off a flight from London on Sunday night, and I'm really still a little bit confused, if I'm being honest, about what day or time or season that we're in. So if at any point I say things and then just stop, that's my brain trying to catch up, because my brain is still asleep in London at the moment, I think, potentially. All right, let's get into it. So Google is such an interesting place to be a lot of the time, but particularly I'd say in the last couple of years where we've had this global crisis in COVID-19 that forced so many people online. And, you know, there's so many challenges that came out of that. But one of the things that I sort of see as a silver lining is that because the use of technology just absolutely increased drastically during that time, our our sort of prioritization of ensuring everyone can access the technology from all different places in the world has actually got a lot better during this time as well. So globally, there is a huge amount of investment happening in EdTech, and this graph actually stops in 2022, which is only during the COVID period. So I can imagine it's only continuing to grow. And Google is obviously part of that ecosystem, but I will tell you that we're not, well, Steve and I anyway, can't speak probably on behalf of the whole company, but we're not naive enough to think that we are the only tool or solution that you would use with young people. And we wouldn't tell you that you have to only do that. We realize that we're part of an ecosystem. And so we hope that we can help to add value to that when we talk about accessible technologies. At Google,
It looks like Kimberly's home internet is succumbing to the heat of Melbourne. We had a situation with this yesterday, so we'll just wait for her to catch up, and hopefully she'll be back with us in a moment. It does look like a very big pause. Oh, there we go. Kimberly is back. Fantastic.
I know. I just was like, my internet's been fine all morning, Steve, until I start to try and use Meet. Okay, I've gone to my phone. We're going to hotspot off my phone. That is the state of the internet in my house right now, that hotspotting off my phone hopefully is better. Okay, so what I was in the middle of saying, did you finish my sentence for me, Steve? Google's
I was
mission.
just saying that your home internet has been succumbing to the heat in Melbourne recently.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that sometimes you drop out a little bit, but no, you're all good.
Okay, great. So our mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And I think we did a really good job of organizing the world's information, and we're getting even better at making it much more accessible over time as well. Some of the things that we're really proud of, I'll share throughout the presentation. So things like the fact that we were actually the pioneers for the concept of providing alt text for images on the internet. So that concept of if you're using a screen reader, and people love images if you can see images clearly, but actually ensuring that there is a good, decent amount of alternative text for those who might be using screen readers or have trouble seeing the image clearly, that actually enables them to be read by a screen reader. Actually, I think it was you, Steve, that was sharing the idea, or somebody was sharing the idea the other day around using Gemini to help you write alt text as well. So you can actually, if you are building something, consider that idea of do you need to provide a text description for that? And Gemini, if you put the image into Gemini, it could do a great job of actually creating some of that alt text for you as well. I'm going to keep going because I will talk too much. And when we think about accessibility at Google, we're very, very aware of the idea that, and I've seen this so firsthand in my own life, that when we design tools for people who have specific needs, we actually create a much more inclusive environment for every student and every learner everywhere. And in my role, I work across the whole of the Asia Pacific region. So I think it's about 15 different countries we cover. And it's so interesting to see how there's some of the challenges that we're trying to solve in particular countries, like the Philippines, who've had 26 typhoons that have closed their school this school year. And like the idea of, okay, well, we need to build technology that enables learning to continue regardless of whether there's a natural disaster that actually disrupts it or not. And when we have that mindset of, if we're building to solve for a specific challenge, we actually help everyone. And some of the really great tools that have come out of the last couple of years, like Read Along, for example, are a great example of that. It was designed to solve a problem around foundational literacy learning for a subset of learners within India, but it actually is solving language acquisition for many people globally. Now, Alfina, who's on the call, actually gave me, I was going to say I stole it from you, Alfina, but I feel like you knew that we had this conversation, this great analogy for when we think about designing with a universal design for learning lens. So thinking about how we are actually designing for everyone. And this is the greatest cartoon description of that. So snow day, something that we're very used to in Australia and New Zealand, our schools getting shut with a snow day. So the snow day, this building is inaccessible. The guy with the shovel is clearing off the stairs. And then there is a man in a wheelchair who says, can you shovel the ramp? And he's like, no, because these kids need to get up the stairs and get into school. And then he says, yeah, but if we shovel the ramp first, everyone could get in. And so it's a really nice metaphor for thinking about that sometimes our default is actually quite exclusionary. And so we need to sometimes just take a step back and think, well, we might have always done something this particular way, but if we just pivot it a little bit, we actually can be more accessible for everyone. So at Google, when we talk about education, we specifically, probably should add Gemini to this slide. We specifically really focus on Workspace and Chromebooks, but I'm going to talk about the ecosystem surrounding our tools a little bit as well. And when we think about those particular products, so Workspace and Chromebook, and then all of the things that come inside it, we're actually thinking about how do we build with an accessible first mindset. So how do we make sure that the products we're building and each one of those products actually has the ability to be customized in its experience so that everybody can access it. And I mentioned Gemini, and we probably should put it on that earlier slide. AI has definitely helped with this. So we are seeing this incredible acceleration across Google, but everywhere, obviously, with AI helping us to do things more effectively than we were able to do them previously. And I'm going to share a few of those examples today. But one that I think was only last year that came out was this huge thing around OCR. So actually being able to, there was something like, 360 billion PDFs on the internet that were totally inaccessible to many screen readers. And so Google sort of pioneered this OCR technology to make them much more accessible. One of my favorite stories of the last 12 months is with Google Translate, which is obviously an incredible accessibility tool for different language learners. And I'm going to make the number up. But it's something like we had 130 languages in Google Translate since its beginning, and many of you have used Translate over the years and know its sort of evolution, getting better and better. And last year we doubled the number of languages that were available through Google Translate because AI is now enabling us to accelerate that technology at a rate not ever seen before. And if you think about that idea of providing access to something like Google Translate, which most of you might be English language speakers on this call, so you know that we are very fortunate to be English speakers. But if you are not, this idea that parts of the world have been inaccessible to you because a technology didn't provide you an ability to communicate clearly has totally been changed because of AI. Okay. Final thing, and then we're going to jump into some specific tools, is, as I mentioned, I was in London last week. Steve and I were for a sort of annual year kickoff event, which only took us 29 hours of traveling to get to. So we were really excited about it being so close to Australia and New Zealand. But one of the things that was actually really cool about being in the London office is that London for Google is home to one of, I think it's only a couple in the world. It's something called an ADC, which is an Accessibility Discovery Centre that they've actually built into our office. And what this Discovery Centre is designed to do is actually enable people to bring in users from all different places, different organizations, schools, businesses, and actually walk them through the technology that we have already and that we are building to do with accessibility. And they have all these really amazing stations set up, which I've got a few photos of on here, which I just loved. And I'm going to share some of the technologies. I learned about a new tool I'd never heard of last week, which was awesome. I think Steve's favorite part was the gaming. So they had these arcades where they were actually using different game controls. So they had one which was enabled you to control the game by the directional movement of your eyes. They had another one, which I think this one was, where you could actually use your head to move a control. They had all these different ways of actually creating access to something quite fun like gaming, and then these stations that sort of focused on different accessibility needs. And it was really, really fabulous to see the team that have put this together walk us through it and talk about the why behind it. And, you know, and simple things like Chromebooks are designed with a lowercase keyboard. And that was a really deliberate design decision by Google, because when young learners are learning to read, they are taught lowercase first. So the idea was that it was lower cognitive processing for young people who, at the sort of time that they're learning to read for the first time, might be the sort of time that they're getting introduced to technology as well. And so not actually having to match those cases was just an easier entrance point. And the team that were talking about it was saying, you know, that doesn't take us any more time or effort. It just takes us the process of actually making a deliberate decision to make our tools as accessible as possible. And yeah, so I just wanted to flag it. It's incredible. We're building a new office in Melbourne at the moment. And so I have already sent an email to the team and said, hey, can we get an ADC in Melbourne? There's just a little one even would be really cool, because some of the technologies that they're showcasing and the idea of making these conversations mainstream and common and purposeful, I think, is really an incredible and worthwhile use of time. Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot and just ask, was there any highlights from the ADC for you that I haven't mentioned? Any of the tools or things that you saw?
I think there was a corner where you could put on different sets of glasses to kind of emulate different type of learning needs. That was really, really interesting. And that amazing app that we also saw that I've just installed today, and I'm trying to remember what it's called.
Is this the sound one?
Yes, where it tells you what you can see.
Yeah, I'll find. It's called Sound Amplifier. That's the one I was going to share. I actually tried it. I was at an event on Monday. Yeah, I'll find the link. I'll put it in the chat here as well. I tried it at the conference on Monday.
Oh no, I was talking about the one that's called Lookout, and Lookout uses your phone.
That's not the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, and Lookout uses your phone camera and tells you what you can see in the picture. So if you switch it on and you point it at a water bottle, it'll say water bottle. And the idea with that is, if people who have low vision, it can help them to basically magnify their world. It'll read text to you. It'll tell you what you're looking at. So it's a really cool Android app for your phone. So that was the one that I love. And yeah, as you said,
can you find the link to that, Steve, and drop that in the chat? Yeah, the other one that I'm going to share quickly is called Sound Amplifier. And we're not going to switch to our phones to try and demo them, because it is really hard to switch between a Chromebook and your phone in a live meet sharing. But what Sound Amplifier does is it's using AI technology, and you connect to Bluetooth headphones. And it's sort of designed, you can see it on here, it's designed to I guess be an entry point to something like hearing aids for people. And so once you've connected it, it'll actually use your camera, and you can point it at a person that is speaking, and the AI will actually do a really good job of trying to remove all of the peripheral sounds and actually amplify the voice of the speaker in the room. And I was at a conference on Monday, and it was a really large room, and there were people talking, and I was actually walking around. This might sound a little bit creepy and potentially nosy into people's private conversations, but I was walking around the room and trying it out. And as I walked towards people, I actually would select the person's voice who I wanted amplified, and it did a great job of actually changing the ability to hear their voice over others. It just sort of knocked out the background noises quite effectively. So worth checking those out because they're just both free apps that exist. And I can see, Jess, you asked about if they're available on Chromebooks. The Google Play Store you can access through Chrome OS. But the way it works in education is that you actually have to enable individual apps. So you can't just search for an app. So you would need to get, and Steve, at any point, tell me if I'm making this up, you would need to get your admin to actually enable access to both Lookout and Sound Amplifier. And then you would be able to see it in the Play Store and access it on your Chromebook.
It will depend on the Chromebook model as well. So for some, it will work better. I know I tried it on my one and it wouldn't let me do it. But yeah, it may depend on the Chromebook model you have as well.
Yeah. So I just loved the fact that we're building things like this just because we have the technology. We've got the capacity to do it. So why wouldn't we? Basically, because we can actually make a positive impact. Okay. So speaking of tools, I'm just going to pause for 1 second. Please do continue to ask any questions, comments in the chat. I'm just going to have one moment of teacher wait time to see if anyone did want to ask anything specifically, and then we're going to move on. Excellent. That's my sufficient teacher wait time. Do continue just to interrupt me. And Steve's hanging around, obviously, so he will answer all the questions as well. Okay, so we're going to jump in and look at some tools specifically built into Google's products, but we also have some incredible partnerships with third parties, so other manufacturers of technology who build additional stuff on top of our tools. And I'll just show you a couple quickly before we jump into ours specifically. So I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to have a favorite, but if I had to have a favorite, which I do, it's TextHelp. If you haven't checked out their accessibility apps, Read and Write is this most incredible tool for reading on a Chromebook. And we were also lucky enough last week to have some students from some of the local London schools come and work with us. And there was this fabulous young boy who was showing us on his Chromebook about how he was using Read and Write, and they've got a screen shader built into Read and Write, which will actually highlight certain sections. So as a learner is reading on the screen, it will actually darken parts and just have a bar that they can highlight in, so focus. But he was talking about how he used it not only for helping him track his reading, but the screen shader will actually change the color of the screen. And back on this previous slide, one of the things that they have set up at the neurodivergent section within our ADC was all of these different overlays of colors onto the screen to help people's eyes process the information on the screen more effectively. And it was really interesting because, several people tried this, and people need different colors because we're all different. Fascinatingly enough, we're all different and unique. And so I love the fact that TextHelp has that built in to the tools, amongst a million other things. Another one that they talked about last week that's built into our ADC Center is Beeline Reader. So this is a Chrome extension. And what this actually does is that it helps with tracking. So it will change the font once you've enabled it to a dyslexic friendly font, but it will also, and you can customize the way this works, shade the words on a line of text to help your eyes track it more effectively. So it will do things like bold or change the colors throughout. So just to help with tracking and eye strain and things like that, which is pretty incredible. But our tools ourselves are also pretty incredible. But as I said before, we know we're part of an ecosystem. We're really grateful that everybody is thinking about how they can actually make this more accessible. So I'm going to focus in on a few key ones. And then if there's any specific things that you want to know about, please do feel free to ask as well. I'm going to start with, I'm going to start with captions because it's one that everybody always asks about. And Steve mentioned at the start, so hopefully you have realize that within Google Meet, you have the capacity to choose captions for yourself. And when you turn on captions, you may have seen that you have the option to change the language of the caption as well. I have found this, for me personally, I use captions a lot because, as I mentioned, I'm really fortunate to get to work across 15 different countries now. Everybody will speak to me in English, but people have very thick accents and things like that sometimes. And I actually find captions really help me from my cognitive processing point of view to track along with people as they're speaking. But I also had a call recently where everybody was talking in another language because I was the only person that only spoke English, which made me feel incredibly uneducated. I turned on the captions into the language that they were speaking, so I was able to somewhat track the conversation that was happening as well. And it's pretty amazing how good the captions are nowadays. Obviously, I am not a great presenter on accessibility because I talk too quickly, right? And that makes me much more inaccessible. And the captions are really impressive in terms of keeping up with me and getting it 99% of the time correct. My strong recommendation is that if you are using captions, and you're right, Alfina, they've improved dramatically in the last 18 months. And that's AI. We have AI to thank for that because it's just got so much better at understanding us. If you as a teacher want to use something like this in your class, actually, when I was in Korea last year, I saw this incredible example of this teacher who, rather than presenting by just plugging a laptop straight into a projector or screen at the front of the room, what she had actually done was she had all of her students in the room on their Chromebooks joining a Google Meet. And the reason she did that was that then they could share their work. So they're taking in turns of sharing their work. So you don't need to pay for additional hardware or software to do that. You could just use Google Meet and share the Google Meet up. And what that enabled, though, by creating that environment was that there were a whole lot of children in the room who had switched on captions and they could read along with what was being said in the room. And it didn't have to be a big deal because, often kids would prefer to miss out than stand out. So just enabling them to access what they needed. But it also gave them the opportunity to use things like emoji reactions to things that were happening. And obviously some of you might be thinking about classes you teach and think, oh my gosh, I would just have nonstop emojis on the screen. And yes, the first time you do this, you will. But most students are really good at living up to the expectations that we set, but also that novelty of it wears off. And what this teacher was talking about was that how, some of the quietest kids in the room who, you wouldn't necessarily know if they were even really engaging or listening to what was happening would sometimes react with emojis. And it was just helping to keep track of where everybody was going. Plus the chat option meant that a student didn't have to raise their hand and they could actually support each other in the chat as well. So that captions piece within Meet has these incredible opportunities to be a really worthwhile, useful thing in a classroom. We also have it built into Google Slides. And so when you're in presentation mode on Google Slides, if you hover over the bottom left-hand corner of your presentation, you'll see the menu to navigate through your slide deck. And in here, we have our caption preferences. And this will actually turn on captions within Google Slides. So now if you have captions on in Meet, you'll see double captions happening. I actually have no idea. It'd be quite interesting if they actually caption the same words. They potentially might add different words. But if you are using a slide deck and you can change these from top to bottom, you can make them different sizes as well. But if you are using a slide deck in your classroom, just switching on captions doesn't take much effort, doesn't really change anything much for you as a teacher, but it will actually make the lesson potentially way more accessible for those who need that support in their learning as well. I will say, and I started to say this before, that if you've not ever taught with captions on, or not really presented with captions on, like I said, when you've not done emojis with kids before, the kids use it all the time. With you as a presenter or as a teacher, the first time you turn captions on in a room, you like, it's distracting for you because you keep wanting to read the captions and see if they're correct. So my very strong recommendation would be to not let yourself see the captions. Otherwise, you actually keep fact checking the captions. You read them and go, oh, that's not exactly what I said. Oh, that's right. Wow, that's really impressive. Actually, I spoke really quickly then and it still understood me, so on and so forth. So really great built-in tools to support learners. The other ones we have with captions, and I'm going to jump into my Chromebook settings here. So if you have a Chromebook, these are inbuilt. So we are trying to think about being accessible by design in all of our products and our tools. So the Chromebook settings are able to be accessed from the bottom right-hand corner of your Chromebook where your time is, and then the little cogwheel, which is the settings menu for most things in the Google world. And then we have a whole section within our settings on accessibility. One thing I always tell people who have Chromebooks as a tool in their schools is to really make sure that you encourage everyone to have this top button turned on, because what this does is this puts the accessibility options as a default in your little quick menu, which is when you click on the time, you don't have to come into the settings menu. All of the accessibility options are then really easy to turn on and off right there and then. And, you know, just creating this environment. One of the things that when I think about accessibility tools is that for a long time, and I think we're breaking some of this, but there's been a sort of a stigma associated with, oh, I need to have an accommodation in my learning, and children aren't necessarily going to necessarily even recognize or want to acknowledge that as well. So the more things we can do in terms of modeling and making this the barrier to entry for using accessibility tools, the more likely it's going to benefit others. So in our accessibility functions built straight into our Chromebooks, we actually have a live caption option in here as well. And when you turn this on, it will actually, if you have any audio playing from anywhere on your Chromebook, so if it's an audio file, if it's something embedded into something that you're watching or listening to that wouldn't have captions by design, this will actually turn on a caption bar on the Chromebook. And so enable you to have everything that has been, all the sound that is being created through the Chromebook be accessible via captions in here as well. And you can see that there's also the option to translate those captions built into the Chromebook as well, which is a really awesome tool in there. The other one that I always like to share with people when I talk about captions are captions over in our YouTube world, because I don't know about you, but I don't know how I would learn anything without YouTube. This is a really weird selection of videos that's come up on my YouTube home screen. Anyway, so when you come across to YouTube, interestingly enough, all of the videos on YouTube will have captions by design, because when you upload a video to YouTube, you can either choose to add your own subtitle track, or AI will actually provide a caption track for that video. So everyone will have a captions option. And underneath your little cogwheel, which is your settings, again, like everything, there will be options associated with these subtitles or closed captions. So the one that we all sort of see most of the time is English, but then underneath that, once you click into, so I clicked into my subtitles closed captions section, you'll see there's another options option here, options option. And this is a really great one to know about, because sometimes those captions on YouTube are actually quite inaccessible, because they'll be black and white on top of a dark video and things like that. So you can change the background color, the font color, the size, the opacity. You can change the font family, so you can find a font that is more accessible for the learners in your environment, all within that option. And then very finally, and then I'm going to move on, when you are on any video on YouTube, when you expand the information about the video, down the bottom you actually have a transcript for that video that's available. And this is literally every word that's said in the entire video for you. You can't export this explicitly yet. And I don't know, I've been saying yet for a while. I feel like I should start harassing the people at YouTube to let have an export to Google Docs button here. But you can copy and paste this. So obviously you can just select it all, copy and paste it. And then this would create the opportunity for you to provide the transcript to a video in advance, and kids then not just having to read the live captions as the video is progressing, but actually moving back and forth through it as well. This is also a great little one to know about if you are trying to find a specific spot in a video, because if you click on any of these words, it will actually jump you to that exact moment in the video where those words are spoken as well. So a really great way of navigating through a video, and a really good one to show kids about navigating through a video if they need to go back and watch it as well. Okay, Alfina, you're writing something, sorry. Yeah, great. So do you want to say anything about that, Alfina, or is that so?
Oh, what, the captions?
Yeah, so you get them, you just explicitly, do you show the kids that you actually explicitly would show them to pause the video as well?
Yeah, because I've got a background in flip learning and I do it in my classroom. If I share a video, whether I've made it or someone else has made it, I will say, turn on captions, pause, rewind, whatever you need to do whenever you're note taking. That way, there's no excuse for bad spelling if you're taking spelling from the captions, as long as the caption's spelled correctly. But yeah, so if they're note taking as well, pause, take that vocab, especially because I teach a lot of science and tech, so a lot of subject specific vocabulary. I have a lot of neurodivergent kids in my classes who really benefit from that. So captions are not just for deaf, hard of hearing, it's for anybody who needs to ease that cognitive load.
Yeah, I have captions on all the time in my life. I love captions. I watch TV with captions, and I find for me it just helps me to process it differently. I'm going to share a couple final things, and then Steve's going to tell me to stop talking soon. So that's the only reason Steve's here, is to keep me in line. Otherwise he knows that I'd be, oh, actually I'm going to have to share my window to do this. So sorry, just let me just reshare. It's interesting, as you were talking, Alfina, because I had turned off my captions in Meet, but my captions on my Chromebook were captioning you. So I had a whole nother section of captions captioning you as you were speaking, because I didn't have my other captions on, which I just did exactly the same thing. Okay, I'm going to show you one of, I would say, one of my favorite, I think Steve would agree with this, one of my favorite things that we actually released last year, and I haven't actually checked this on this site. Okay, you can see the ABC News now, right? In my window? Great. It's got this funny thing warning me about my infinity mirror because I'm sharing a whole window, and I think the Meet is attached to this window. So anyway, so one of the things that we released last year was something in Chrome called reading mode. And you know, if you're trying to read something online, and I was trying to find an uplifting story in the news, and there is no such thing, it turns out. But anything we read online can be incredibly distracting because, you know, all of these companies are making money by keeping us on their websites. So they're trying to get us related articles, as advertisements, so on and so forth. And so what we actually released, can you see, you can't see my menu, can you? You see my menu? I might take a screenshot of this and put it in there. So underneath, in the top right-hand corner of your Chrome browser, you'll see 3 dots. When you click on that, it brings up your menu for Chrome. And if you scroll down to the third from the bottom, the option's called More Tools. When you hover over that, you'll see that there is an option to turn on something called reading mode. And what reading mode is once you have it on, and you can pin this to your taskbar as well. So now you can see it up here. You can't see when I right click on it though. Oh, you don't see that. When I right click, I'm actually pinning it to my taskbar, so it'll sit up there all the time. Reading mode will actually extract all of the text from a site that you're on and put it into a much more readable format. And you can customize this look and feel for whatever you need to. So you can change the font. I've got mine in dark mode because that's how I prefer everything on my Chromebook. You can change the spacing, all of those sorts of things as well. But one of the other really cool things it does is it will now also read aloud this text. So I can actually get it to read this text to me, which is just such a really wonderful way of allowing different processing paths for information. And this, as you can see, just so much less busy and noisy than what we actually see on the website itself. So reading mode only came out second half of last year, but it's probably one of our favorite new features. Okay, so I've stopped talking already, aren't I? Okay, I'm just going to go back to my deck. Wait, share. Oh, I've got too many tabs open. So there is a bazillion. Oh, there is a screenshot of reading mode in here somewhere, maybe. Here you go. And this is the one I just talked about, and it is incredibly powerful. So there is a bazillion other things that we could talk about, but we only have a shortish period of time together. So I'm not going to talk about them all now. Oh, sorry, Steve, I'm reformatting the slide you just put in here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you, sorry, I don't know how to control my Chromebook when I'm sharing a window. That's really weird. To just take a moment to complete a quick little bit of feedback, but also I don't have to drop off straight away. So if there were things that you're particularly interested in, or if you've clicked through the presentation, you have a question about something in there, please feel free to stay and ask anything. If I don't know the answer, and I don't know all of the answers at all to anything, but I always am very keen to help and support and try and find out the answer. So if you can fill in that quick feedback form, though, that would be great. And while you're doing that, not that I'm trying to make you multitask, but I am, the other story that I realized that I found incredibly powerful from the students that we got the opportunity to work with last week from one of the London schools was this young kid who was talking about speech to text. So most of you hopefully have seen, and if you haven't, we have the option to do voice typing built into many of our Google products now, but there are also options with something like the text help extension that I mentioned before that will provide that access if it's not built in by design yet. And this school was talking about how they have sort of enabled all of their students to work out how they can best process and type. And so for they had this great example of this kid who when they were asked to write for, I think they had like 5 minutes to write, or 3 minutes, or 2 minutes to write. When they were asked to write for 2 minutes, this kid wrote something like 34 words. And when they were given a Google Doc and told that they were just going to type for 2 minutes, and this wasn't a sequential activity, this was sort of helping to identify the best way of processing for this particular learner. When they were asked to type in a Google Doc, that increased to something like 50 words that they were able to actually process in that time. And then they were given access to voice typing in Google Docs. And it was something like 300 words, or it's like some exponential growth in the ideas that were unlocked from this young learner's mind just by having a different way of getting them out and processing them verbally. So never underestimate how these small changes can make a really big impact. And I think the more we can just model and share different processes and different tools that exist to support learners, the more we remove the stigma, and the more likely that an individual learner will find something that best suits them and is going to help to unlock that incredible things that are happening inside their minds at all times. Okay. That is it from me. I'm already over time, and that's not surprising for anyone who's ever come to a session I've ever run before. But yes, so if you need to drop, thank you so much for spending your morning/early afternoon in New Zealand with us today. We know how incredibly precious your time is. Good luck with your back to school journey. And just feel free to reach out to Steve or I at any point if there's anything that we can ever do to assist you. So drop if you would like to. Otherwise, yeah, like Cheryl, feel free to hang around and ask any questions. Cheryl, over to you.
Well, I was going to say thank you very much for your time and your expertise, Kimberly. It's always great to see the things that are built in. I'm just going to stop the recording now. So if people want to stay and ask questions, they definitely can. So I'll click stop recording